Hey friends, it's Russell. I want to take a few minutes to talk about the mentoring life cycle. We've got this assignment, and I intentionally gave no instructions as to how you get it done. Most folks freak out; they think I've left something out. Actually, the idea is to have you get into the problem of what we're trying to do, so that when it's time to talk through some of the structures, you have places to put the thing away. So there's a method to the madness. You may not like it, but that's my idea. 6 stages to a mentoring life cycle. This is a description of how it usually goes. It is not necessarily a prescription, but it is a reflection on 6 elements that seem to be in the relationships that I have been engaged in. So let's jump right into them. The first step is something that you could call inspiration. You see that on the pie chart slide in the upper left-hand corner. Inspiration. This is a place where you are seeking God to determine, is this someone that you should be spending time with? Is this someone that you have God has a plan for you in their lives in a developmental conversation? So the first step of mentoring is not a social step, it's a piety step. It's to be in prayer. It's to be at a distance. The second stage is one of investigation. It might get social, but this is one that you still can do from 60 feet away. Where you are looking at the shelf of their life, looking for blank and gaps and missing spaces in their life, and looking at the resources that you have in your life. The matchup is, hey, they have a gap there, I've got some goods here. When you move to the next step, initiation, there's something concrete to talk about. Where you, so let's get into it. Initiation, this is where you get specific about a plan. At some point, you walk across the room, you close the distance over that 60 feet or so, and you say, hi, my name is, if that isn't already established, it probably is if you are sorting through a possible developmental relationship. But you initiate something that goes something like, hey, I've been noticing you. I've noticed some real calling and opportunities that are developing in your life. I also noticed that there's a space on your shelf for this. I happen to have that in my life, and I wonder if you want to spend some time around developing in that area, or having some conversations, becoming more conscious and competent around that area. That's what initiation could sound like. It could be this way. The mentee approaches someone that's down the road or someone that's a senior and says, hey, I've noticed that when you do this up there, maybe it's preaching or maybe it's time management. I notice that you do that well. I have not done that very well in the past, and I could use some mentoring moments to skill up and learn how to be better at that or more complete with this particular practice. Would you be willing to meet with me around some guiding experiences? So the initiation could have that kind of feeling. The things to notice in those 2 role plays is it was actually achieved. We walked across the room. There was a concreteness about what was being discussed. It was based on some things that you could actually say, here's an example of what you have, or an example of the whole, and in a way that a person can relate to it, so it's specific enough. What you'd want to turn that conversation into is the times, the meetings, the content that's going to be involved in the developmental thing. If it's just, let's get together at Applebee's and hang out, well, that's called hanging out. It's not called mentoring. There is a design and an intentionality. There's an exchange of resources. So that should be talked about in the initiation. It might sound something like, would you consider meeting over the next 6 months, the first Monday of every month, and we talk through the 6 chapters of that book with you giving me feedback on some of the reading that I've done on it. We'll meet at 9 o'clock. We'll meet for 1 hour. I'll email you to let you know my homework is done. So it can be as specific as that. The next piece is impartation. There has to be something on the shelf that when the process is done, it's on the other person's shelf. That's why a aimless coffee shop hangout time doesn't usually qualify for mentoring, because we don't know if there's been an exchange. We don't know what the purpose of the thing has been unless there's been some design. So I suggest that there's actually prepared content, that if there is a skill to be learned, or a resource to be mastered, or a attitude to be adjusted, that it gets named, and there's some actual reading, there are some principles, there are steps, there are ways to determine if this is being transferred and developed. And prepared content, homework, those kinds of things are often useful for that. The next stage is imitation. Unless there is an actual transfer from one life to the other life, we don't know that anything's actually happening. And this is a Pauline concept, that people would be imitators of one another. One of the shortcuts of if there are shortcuts in spirituality, I think they come in the form of imitation, of just do as your master does. Jesus would say. Paul would say, follow me as I'm following Christ. Now, if the person's not following Christ, you're off the hook. But if they're following Christ, Paul is saying, get this principle and get this practice in your life to the degree that I'm following Christ. So imitation, this is a opportunity to see that the learner is adapting and adopting and applying principles, skills, and perspectives gained from the mentor. And there should be a kind of a check-in or a insert of the thermometer. Is that thing done yet? Are you moving forward? Is this actually being solved, or whatever the process that's involved in? But the point there is that the progress must be measurable to know if anything's actually happening. And the next and the final stage also starts with an I, iteration. There's probably better, less doctoral words to describe this, but it's the idea of catch and release, that a mentoring relationship is not complete until a person is reproducing in others, replicating the experience in others. I would suggest the idea that at initiation, terminal conditions are discussed right from the beginning. That we discuss the idea, pardon me, my screen is going a little crazy here, that we discuss right from the beginning a desire for the person to take what has been given and to be passed on to others. You never learn it like you do when you have to pass it on to someone else. And we see this all through the gospel, that Jesus is depending upon the 12 to pass these things on to faithful others. Paul represents these kinds of themes, giving folks assignments and sending them into other settings, expecting them to be reproducers of the principles or the values that he, the apostle, represented. So that's a talk through in less than 10 minutes of the mentoring life cycle, and I hope that's helpful for you. I'm going to try to get a few other videos like this put out there. Talk to you later. Bye.